Hello, Vernon. Thank you for
Hi.
joining us on the podcast today.
Well, thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure, and we've got to thank also my good friend and your relative as well.
Cousin-in-law, yeah.
That's right, Rob, for
Yep.
doing this. Thank you, Rob. Vernon, you've had some I don't know, interesting would be a good way to describe it, I guess. But we thought we'd speak a bit about some of your experiences
Sure.
coming to Perth at a young age and at a time that was sort of shifting dynamics in Australian society as well,
Yeah, yeah.
and a bit about that. So yeah, can you perhaps just give a bit of background into some of those experiences and what led to that coming to
Sure.
Australia?
I'm from Malaysia, and
Sure.
Malaysia itself is quite a multicultural country.
Hmm.
As you would know, it's kind of a sliver of a peninsula coming off Thailand and ending with Singapore at the bottom.
Right.
And so we have perhaps maybe the largest coastline uh, per landmass ratio.
Right.
And so therefore it's highly porous and
Mm.
various cultures and races come in.
Mm.
Um, my background, family wise, ancestry, is that both my mother and father are known as Sarani,
Mm.
or sometimes referred to as Eurasians, which is the communities of mixed race people that resulted from the Europeans, firstly the Portuguese, then the Spanish and French and the English and the Dutch,
Mm.
coming and having mixed race children, and those communities intermingled and produced more mixed race people of even more mixed
Mm.
races,
Sure.
and eventually over 500 years, a community of particular lifestyle practices, was produced from out of that mix.
Mm.
So I'm from that community, just to give you a background. And
Mm.
so when I came to Australia in 1980, to do my high school final year tertiary admissions examination,
So it was year 12.
year
Okay.
12,
Yeah.
yeah, and then 3 years of university.
Yeah.
Um, yes, I arrived in Australia and went down to study in Rockingham,
Yep.
senior high. And I think I was the only full blood Asian foreign student in a community of, 99.9% white people.
Yeah. Sure.
And I think it was the point of Australian political history where they were trying to come to terms with Australia being part of Asia.
Right.
And so the teachers went out of their way to be as inclusive as possible
Yeah.
with me.
Yeah.
And therefore, I benefited from that experience. And my friends, white Australian friends, were welcoming. In
Sure.
fact, they were curious and they really
Yeah.
wanted to get to know me.
Right.
And so I did kind of like enjoy special treatment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I remember a bunch
Because
of.
you're a novelty.
I was a
guess.
novelty,
Yeah.
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 And they used to playfully, the more cheeky kids playfully would call me Refo
Okay.
for refugee.
Okay. Sure. Right.
And I guess because I come from a minority in Malaysia, those kinds of cheekiness or teasing doesn't hurt me,
Right. Okay.
and I kind of ride over it. So
Sure.
I guess perhaps maybe that kind of dynamics at play,
Yeah.
already being an outsider where I come from,
Yeah.
and then coming here, I was, you could say, more resilient to any kind of like teasing or
Right.
nuances of discrimination.
Yeah.
And I could ride above it, and that gave me perhaps a little bit of an advantage,
Right.
and toughness and
Yeah.
an ability to look at it from a particular point of view that maybe was less sensitive, if that's the right
Right.
word.
Yeah. Yeah. A bit more
Yeah.
understanding of the dynamics involved.
Yeah,
With
perhaps,
it.
yeah.
What led you to come to? How come you decided to come to
Ah.
Perth and especially Rockingham? Which I mean, I grew up in Rockingham as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
Even when
yeah.
I was there, like the '90s, very white, sort of
Yes, very English.
monocultural, very English,
Yeah.
skinhead type.
Yes, I
yeah.
I was teased by the skinheads,
Sure.
but my white friends would jump in and protect me from that.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah.
So I had those kinds of experiences.
Yeah.
But the reason why I came here to Australia to study was because, being of a minority race in Malaysia, we are subject to certain kinds of what they call positive discrimination in Malaysia,
Okay.
where Malaysians of Malay
Mm.
racial extraction are given certain advantages.
Okay.
And if you're not a Malay, which happens to be the majority, if you're
Mhm.
not a Malay, then it's a little bit more difficult to get into tertiary education.
Okay, sure.
Especially at my time, when I was at that age at that time.
Yeah.
So it seemed better to attempt to go overseas to study,
Right.
and then you'd probably have the opportunity to do the courses you wanted to do, rather than get subjected to government legislation or decisions.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
And I had an uncle, a maternal uncle, who had migrated here from Malaysia in '74. So this is 1980.
Right.
I turned up here, and I joined the family. He took me in. So for my parents, it was a good thing because, they had my uncle kind of like, taking me in and providing all the expenses that I needed to undertake my tertiary education.
Sure.
And at that point in time, education for foreign students was free.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
But I
right,
came in.
interesting.
I came in.
Yeah.
This is Bob Hawke.
Yeah.
Where I guess Australia was trying to maybe even attract talented young people.
Yeah.
And so they made education free for foreign students.
Right. Okay.
If you met a particular standard in your examinations.
Okay. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So for instance, in Malaysia, I had to have a grade 1 in my Malaysian certificate of education.
Yeah.
In order to come here, and that would have to put you kind of like maybe in the top 15% of the.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Grade 1 of a particular aggregate, which would be
Yeah.
maybe top 15% of the students who took part in the examination, and then only could you apply.
Right.
And
okay.
then it'd be free. But I came in at a point when they started to implement fees.
Right. Okay.
So I paid 1,005 for my first year high school free.
Yeah.
Second year 1,005. First year 1,005, second year 1,007, and third year 1,009.
Right. Okay.
So they slowly increased it every year.
Sure.
But I got it for such a low cost.
Yeah. And what did you study in your tertiary?
Well, I was a science student in Malaysia, but
Okay.
I really was yearning to do stuff like English literature.
Right. Okay. Sure.
And so when I came here,
Bit of a dichotomy, hey?
yeah. And when I came here, I actually did that dichotomy. I did 3 subjects in the sciences: biology, maths, and physics and chemistry.
Yeah.
And I did economics, English, and English literature.
Right. Okay.
And I came in the second year of the 2-year course, tertiary admission examination. So I'd never done economics or English literature before.
Right.
So
Okay.
here I was coming in on the second year.
Sure. Yeah.
The teachers were fantastic. They knew that I was coming in
Yeah.
at a disadvantage,
Yeah.
and they kind of like tried to help me along,
Right.
gave me additional help, and really helped because I got into, at that point in time, Waites, Western
Yeah.
Australian Institute of Technology,
Okay.
on an unconditional entry, meaning my grades and reports from teachers
Mhm.
on English and English literature was so good that they gave me an entry into university
Based on that.
based on their report,
Yeah,
so I
right.
didn't have to wait for my exam results.
Okay. All right. All right.
So I got the acceptance letter the day of my last paper,
Sure.
and
Yeah,
that
right.
was like, wow, I was so happy.
Yeah. Nice. Oh, yeah. That's good. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that period in your life then, like coming to Australia at that age, I guess 16,
Yeah.
17, was it
No,
somewhere?
I was, when I came in, my classmates were 2 years younger than me. I think I came in when I was 18,
Okay.
maybe even 19.
Yeah.
19.
Right. Okay.
And they were 17 years old. My
Right.
classmates were 2 years younger than me.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Which is a little bit of an advantage there as well, I guess. But
Yeah.
maybe, or yeah, small bit.
But they were all bigger than me anyway.
Yeah, all right, sure, yeah. There's big Aussies and they come around, but yeah. Well, I guess you've come from a country that I guess you probably didn't see many Australian kids or white kids
When I was back home.
in Malaysia, or was that?
Yeah.
Was there an expat community?
No,
there?
well, there might have been, but no, completely kind of like a different world.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so coming to Perth, where it would have been a different world.
Completely. I mean, like arriving at the airport and being addressed as sir by a white man was quite like a weird thing.
Yeah, right. Okay.
You know.
Sure. Yeah.
Or a stranger, a woman at the ice cream shop when I went to get a chocolate coated ice cream. She called me love, so they like struck me like.
yeah. It's like a term of endearment here.
Yeah. I mean, like people are very friendly and they do that kind of thing.
Sure.
Yeah, we do. I mean, like everybody does, but it's just different when it's somebody who, you see as so alien from you, being so friendly,
Yeah.
almost intimate.
Yeah,
if you know what I'm saying.
I
Yeah.
do, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think that's one of the amazing things about traveling, though, right?
Yes,
And like getting
yeah,
to different parts of
yeah,
the world, and
yeah,
certainly
you
something
experience
that I noted when I first went traveling was, you know, again, growing up in Rockingham, there are biases there
Yeah.
with other race. It is. It's part of, not just saying it's a Rockingham thing, but especially where there's a strong monoculture
Yes,
of people
yeah,
there.
yeah.
And I just remember like traveling into these different parts of the world, first going through, you know, the first time I was in a city overseas was the Dubai airport.
Okay.
And it's like a melting pot of people,
Yeah,
right? Dubai
yeah,
airport,
yeah.
it's people all over the world.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking like how the idea of these perceptions of racism and races is just absolute crap. It's just absolute bullshit. Like
Yeah, when it comes
the
up-
idea of fear and
Yeah.
we should fear
Yeah.
the other or fear
Yeah.
the minority
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
have some anger or there's this hatred. It was during the time of Pauline Hanson was, you know,
Right,
but
yeah,
that's
yeah,
when I went over
yes.
there. And I was just like, this is just, once you have that experience for yourself and it's not something that you've learnt,
Yeah.
it changes your understanding and perspective of the world and sort of our own individual place in it as well.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you know, I was here for after my first year at high school. I mean, like, I had lots of my friends saying, you know, you're the first Asian person, you know, I've met and got to know, and you know, you've taught me things. I had people saying that to me,
Yeah.
and it was wonderful to hear that.
Yeah, for sure.
You know?
Yeah, I can imagine.
And I guess that's what's necessary. That you know, the more inclusive kinds of milieus that we have, yeah, the more it's all about strangeness. It's all about
Yeah.
that idea of othering, where because somebody's different from you, there is some reason to fear them,
Right.
or feel threatened.
Yeah.
And that's what's causing the problem.
That's right.
You know.
Yeah.
And so we should try and get difference to be celebrated.
Sure.
That idea of diversity to be celebrated, not just grandstanding our own identities and our own cultures,
Yeah.
but to actually look at something else and you know, seeing the wonderments of that difference.
Definitely. Yeah.
And you know what? It just occurred to me, like, over the last week, one of the things that has helped is food channels.
Oh yeah, sure.
You know, because
Yeah.
food is so sensuous and
Definitely.
primal,
Yeah.
right? And incredibly, how shall I say it? Yeah, sensual and tactile and, you know, wondrous. I mean, visually it's spectacular and stuff. So I was watching a raft of shows on the SBS. There's a
SBS Food
SBS
channel?
Food,
Yeah.
And I was thinking, like, yeah, this is what it is.
Yeah.
This is how you get people to feel comfortable with
Yeah.
otherness and
Definitely.
difference.
Yeah,
Because
that's a really
food
good
is
point.
so harmless.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, it's an art form, right? Food
Yeah.
and the way they present it as an art form. I think
And
like
enjoyable.
obviously enjoyable,
Yeah.
too. Like music and like you know, more formal type of art where
Right,
it's a
yeah.
universal lange where we can
Yes.
come together, whatever race you are, wherever you're from, and appreciate this one element and enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I hadn't thought about that too. I've thought about music being a universal communicator, but not so much food. But yeah, it definitely is. Of course it is. It makes
Yeah.
total sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
food is easier and more immediate and you know,
Yeah.
urgent in its ability to give you an experience different from anything else.
That's right. It is.
you
Yeah.
know? And then the next thing, of course, would be meeting the person who made that food.
Sure. Yeah.
know,
Exactly. Yeah.
right?
And the story behind it.
And the story behind it, yeah.
Yeah.
And then in listening to stories, then you know, some common ground is established.
Yeah.
And the otherness isn't as frightening or, you know, threatening.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you were talking about the otherness and I guess like the idea of becoming more comfortable with it or getting out of our comfort zone and experience the otherness, like
Yeah.
there still is I feel like a public discourse and a narrative driven by especially politics and I think media, although there's different left-wing, right-wing leanings towards this who do still want to strongly, I'm thinking like the John Howard era nationalism, which was like maybe an indirect way of this, but we may as an individual or as a group of people want to experience the other, but it seems that there still is narrative of, you know, America versus China or America versus Iran or, you know, Australia versus whoever, like this whole tribal mentality that comes in from a macro level, whereas just on an individual level, we're just like, nah, everything's cool, like it's all good, but we still live within that in our society.
Well, you see, the thing about it is that in politics, it's all about assertion of power and hanging on to it,
Right.
and that's where I think the danger lies. This idea that power needs to be clung to,
Yeah.
and at any cost,
Right.
and that's where it's kind of like screws everything up.
It does. Yeah.
And yeah, I'm trying to figure it out myself because I come from a country where just last year we changed the government after 61 years. I don't know whether you know about it.
Yeah, I don't know much about Malaysian political history.
But Malaysia had been ruled for 61 years by an alliance which was race based.
Okay.
And last year we managed to, the people managed to overturn the government. And we changed the government, and most of the parties were not race based. There were some, but most of the parties were not race based. So now, progressive Malaysians are trying to cling on to the hope that race based politics is on the way out.
Yeah.
But it's so difficult to shake it off people.
Yeah.
This idea that we need to hang together because of the color of our skin, or because of the religion, or because of certain cultural practices, commonalities, ideologies. Well, ideologies not so much. I mean, like with regards to political ideologies. I mean, like if it's discussed on logical terms,
right? Yeah, logical, rational terms.
And doesn't get emotional,
sure,
and spiritual,
yeah,
and where religious theocracies and those kinds of things come into play,
right?
Then perhaps maybe there is hope. But the moment it moves into areas that are emotional and illogical, and is based on faith and stuff,
sure,
where it's quite difficult to pin down, points of agreement or points of commonality, then it's going to be very difficult. So and I'm seeing this. I mean, like, I'm seeing this happen here in Australia with regards to, let's say, the taking away of the arts funding and stuff. I don't know. Recently, right? There's been some change where Australian arts is not going to be managed by the same people who do, I don't know, infrastructure.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. I'll have to have a look into that.
Yeah, kind of like weird. Kind of like weird cobbling.
Yeah, right, okay.
Of function and meaning.
Sure.
So I'm wondering what's going on there.
Yeah.
Because creativity and art making is by its nature spiritual.
Right.
And it's not religious.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
That's right. Yeah.
There's a weird kind of cosmic connection that you make. And I think the moment you start to view artists or art making in a manner that is dismissive, or you're discounting the kind of good that they can do, I think we're regressing.
Yeah.
I seriously think we're regressing.
Yeah.
And I see that happening here with this recent government kind of situation.
Yeah, I mean, that's an issue though that we've had in Australia for some time though, is our sort of what is a perception, or at least of a lack of ability to really facilitate the arts and creativity, and even into the realms of like we're so sort of sport driven as a mode of operandi here in Australia, but whereas other things like science is another one that is looked at as being left out, but the arts especially, and for it to be sort of felt like it's been stripped back even more.
Well,
with
this government, what they're doing to me is like sad, really, really sad, because having come to Australia in the 80s and watching how the country has developed, I think one of its strengths in terms of number one, dealing with its transformation into what was a white colonial outpost into quite an exemplary multicultural nation
in quick time too.
Over a generation. I mean, I see that. I mean, like in Rockingham Shopping Centre, I was the only brown person walking down the aisles in the 80s, and now, like, wow, you've got Asian food stalls. It's right. Wonderful. I feel it's wonderful. Maybe there are some Australians who think that they're being swamped by colored people. I don't know. but I'd like to think that they're in the minority
I think so.
and they're disappearing
Sure.
and they're coming around.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
That's right.
Yeah.
Appreciating,
Slowly appreciating and
Yeah.
learning how to once again celebrate difference.
Right. That's right.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've seen that in a
I've seen
in a
that.
generation, but how do you feel like it might be adverse to what sort of Scott Morrison and that political party are perhaps trying to implement or do? Like, what can you view as what would be the impetus for sort of doing something like this with the arts funding, for example?
I think in art making, the mind is opened to listen to expressions. You know, to be aware that people can express themselves in different ways, and so therefore, if you're building a society that is going to be in a that would have more courage to listen, to see points of view from other people, to listen to their stories.
Sure.
Yeah. Then the idea of change is perhaps more amenable. You know, and maybe that's what they're worried about.
Right.
Because as you know, a lot of dictators, a lot of governments that wanted to control the masses. The first people they went for were the artists.
Yeah, right.
You know, and the thinkers.
Yeah.
And the ones that were, you know, resisting being told what to do.
Sure. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's right. And they just sort of keep the working class there to.
Yeah, yeah. As
for agriculture and keep the factories running, but
correct. Correct.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of like a little bit sad that's happening here.
Sure.
Because it was, for me, it was going the other way. I mean, like that whole idea of like indigenous art and what it meant, and even how Australia treats the indigenous people now. I mean, when I came in the 80s, I don't think there was this thing called welcome to country.
No.
Or acknowledging country.
That's right.
And I love that idea. I think Australia is perhaps, maybe next to New Zealand, would be the only two countries that, you know, accords the indigenous cultures such respect and acknowledgement of, you know, their position in the country.
Sure. We've still got a long way to go.
Yes,
but
I mean,
at
but
least
it's a great
something
start.
at least, yeah.
It's excellent.
That's right.
America doesn't do it.
No.
England,
UK,
with the Celtics and the Irish and all that. You know what I'm saying?
That's right, yeah.
You know, so that whole idea of acknowledging a particular community that was there first is, and especially when that community has been marginalized, you know, and discriminated against for the longest time, you know, that kind of act of reconciliation is a wonderful case in point.
Yeah,
of,
definitely.
Being humble.
Sure.
You know. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It is, isn't it? And I think, like for me, I would love to see a future where there is more of an integration, understanding of Aboriginal thought and law and way of life into Australian, especially with this land, like the connection that Aboriginal people have to the land. Like we as sort of, I mean, I'm like fourth generation Australian or something.
Right.
Like my understanding of this land is sort of based on my own learnings in my lifetime. But Aboriginal people have generations and generations of their ancestors being able to understand nature and creativity
in their
around
genes
them.
already.
It's and to be able to implement that and learn that
memory.
Yeah, exactly, right. And Rupert Sheldrake talks about like a morphic resonance, where it's something that's passed in and through. But we miss that, and I think it's at a disadvantage. And I think what I sometimes think it's a good thought experiment to think about what it would be like if there was a strong integration between the races of the Aboriginal people and this multicultural Australia that we live in now as well. Where it is sort of becoming more Euro-Asian centric, but the Aboriginal people, while there is still an acknowledgement there, we still don't really get taught much about it in school or, you know, primary school or high school, except for a little bit of history. But the fundamental way that Aboriginal people identify with the land and with life and how they view the world and
Yeah,
their
more-
version of God, like, would be an
Yeah.
incredible thing to be able to incorporate into our lives.
Yes. More exposure to how they actually view and frame existence.
Yeah.
I'd like to say that from my experience and what I've seen over the years, it's for me. I think it's quite encouraging.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like in my country, we have Aboriginals, indigenous people,
Mm-hmm.
who to this day are still facing a lot of an uphill battle,
Right.
to assert their rights.
Yeah.
Just basic amenities so difficult for them to
Yeah.
get,
And they're born into that. So
Yes,
yeah.
it's systemic. I mean,
Mm.
but I can see here, there are things being put into place, and it's very encouraging for me to see it, and I share what I see with my people back home,
Mm-hmm.
to say, hey, look, this is quite interesting.
Yeah.
This acknowledgement of country and welcome to country, I
Yeah.
think are such wonderful modes of reminding us,
Sure.
of where we are.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. And where we
in
come
the
from
universe,
too,
and
right?
where we
Yeah.
come from, and stuff like that. So
Yeah, nice. And so with the changing of politics in Malaysia,
Yeah.
and you said last year it was that there was a change
Yes,
in.
yeah.
What are your thoughts in regards to like potential sort of short term, medium term future of socio-political dynamics in Malaysia?
in Malaysia, it's an uphill struggle for the new government to implement reforms,
Okay.
because
What type of government are they?
it's a coalition of different parties.
Okay.
But quite a number of the parties are multiracial.
Okay.
And before this, the United Malay National Organization, which was race-based Malay grassroots, and into kind of like Malay, what is known as Malay supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
The Malay people are the there's this term called Bumiputra, which means Prince of the Earth.
Okay.
So that's the title accorded to the Malay people,
Okay. Right.
not the indigenous.
Sure.
Okay.
Right,
And
okay.
what is the Malay people? The word Malay actually refers to a race in what is known as the Nusantara area,
Okay.
in parts of Indonesia,
Yeah.
the Malay Peninsula, parts of Philippines,
Okay.
Borneo, etc. So you have Borneo Malays, you have Riau Malays, you have Indonesian Malays, you have Filipino Malays, you have Cape Malays, you have Sri Lankan Malays.
Right. Okay.
All these communities that came from a particular part of the world.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
So Malaysia by its nature was a political construct that
Yeah.
became racial, if you know what I'm saying.
Right. Sure. I get you. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So within the Malaysian society itself, we have Malays who are actually Achenese, Sumatrans,
Right.
Riau Malays, which is of Singapore, Javanese. So it's like the word China and Chinese, whereas within the larger framework of Chinese, there are Hakkas and Hokkiens and Teochews and Cantonese, and then there's the Han Chinese,
Right.
and then even within the nation of China, there's the Uyghurs who are facing problems now,
Okay. Yeah.
and they're seen as a minority and have a different faith. So in Malaysia, within a smaller sliver of land, we have all those problems of dealing with difference and identities, and so me being what I am, which is a Sarani, also referred to as Eurasian, but I reject the identity label of Eurasian because that was created by the British
Was it okay? All right.
in the late 1700s, whereas Sarani is an identity label that we had before the British came.
Right. Okay. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Sarani comes from the word Nasrani, which comes from Nazarene, which comes from Jesus of Nazareth.
Yeah. Right.
So it was the Portuguese men who had local women,
Yeah.
and the children were brought up as Catholics,
Yeah. Right.
were referred to as Nasrani.
Right.
And then over time, as other Europeans came and had the mixed race children, and the community kind of like grew
Yep.
in the 500 years, and there were different surnames, like in my family, my mother's her surname is Area, and that's supposed to be Spanish.
Okay.
My father's Emuang. We're not sure what that is. It could be a corruption of either an Asian surname or a European surname.
Sure.
But on both sides of my family, we have Boudeville on my mother's side, which is French, and Césaire on my father's side, which is also French.
Right. Okay.
So it gives you an idea of the real hodgepodge
Sure.
of mixtures.
Yeah.
And then of course you look at me. Do I look French?
Sure. A little bit. Yeah.
Only the way I eat my baguette might
Right.
be a
Sure. Yeah. I like a croissant. Yeah.
Yeah. And so on this sliver of land called the Malay Peninsula, you know, we have so much of mixed races and cultures, and you know, all that happening.
Right.
And in the course of looking at my own ancestry and stuff like that, I decided to talk about it because I guess I want people to perhaps maybe consider how mixed up they are as well.
Sure.
Or yourself? You say you're fourth generation Australian.
Yeah.
What's in there?
Yeah, I know there's some mainly German from my mum's side and English from my dad's side.
Okay.
That's via like Scandinavia before that.
Okay, right.
That's about as much as I know.
And is that all you want to know? Won't it
No,
be
I'd love to know
interesting?
more. Yeah, I'd love to do that gene test. Is it 42?
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah. But so I'd like to know more. I'd like to understand more.
Right.
Yeah,
So
we'll see.
how far back have you gone?
I think just my dad's relatives have done a family tree going back to maybe the 17th or 18th century, maybe. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, a couple hundred years.
Okay.
Yeah. So we know from my dad's side, Norway, around there, through England, into Australia.
Yeah. Well, because of Western culture's ability, written history, and the Christian habit of having church records.
Yeah, right.
I can trace my European ancestry really far back.
Okay. Yeah, right.
So like I've got Viking blood, I've got Norwegian blood.
Yeah, sure.
Through the Boudeville side, because the Boudevilles came from a part of France where the Norwegians settled.
Right, sure.
And the town was called Bordeaux, and there's a town called Bordeaux B-O-D-O, in Norway.
We could have related ancestors.
We could. If we go far back, anybody.
That's right. Yeah.
Far back enough.
Go far back enough. Yeah.
So the European ancestry is easier to trace.
Right.
The Asian ancestry is problematic
because there was not many records kept.
Yeah, correct. And so that's the sad part. So with regards to that term that I mentioned, Eurasian and Serrani.
Yeah.
So I feel that Serrani, because it's a word that goes back further, seems to be the more honest way of saying who I am.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
And Eurasian seems so generic.
Right.
Whereas Serrani places us in Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
Along the India, Burmese, Thai, Malaysia, Singapore, and maybe a little bit of Indonesia, where we're known as Serrani.
Right.
This community of mixed race people.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Eurasian. The term Eurasian is
generic.
quite. Yeah.
Yeah, and it could be like up at Russia.
That's right.
Kazakhstan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't really like it, but that was what the British came up with.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess because they started to have mixed race children.
Right.
And they didn't want their more European, fairer skinned products of their miscegenation get confused with my darker skin, more Asiatic, having been in the region over the generations.
Sure.
So there was that kind of and then as there was intermarrying, the darker skinned, brown skinned people decided to reach for white privilege by identifying with the identity label Eurasian.
Right. Okay.
And saying Serrani was not what we were,
or
was another language.
Yeah.
Which is what, because Serrani they say is a Malay word. But you can't. That's a bit weird to say that it's a Malay word and Eurasian is the English translation, because Eurasian existed long after Serrani had been.
Yeah. Around, right. Sure. It was like a new label that was introduced to Eurasian. By the British. Yeah. And in Malaysia at the moment, is there much of a discourse around Those
I'm actually churning it up.
right. Okay.
So I've been accused of diminishing people's European ancestry by insisting on the use of Serrani rather than Eurasian.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. Right. By what? Which sort of group? Or what groups of people?
Well, I
People,
mean, you
are
know,
they with vested interest in something else, or
yeah, in a sense. I mean, like, identity is a weird kind of thing because, you know, I guess our sense of identity is based on what makes us feel proud. And like in the state of Malacca, there's the Portuguese settlement,
okay,
and they call themselves Portuguese Eurasians.
okay,
And so that idea, their link to Portugal, rightfully gives them a sense of pride because there's history involved. You know that their ancestors were these seafarers who traveled thousands of miles in search of spice. So there's all that romanticism, etc.
yeah,
involved.
definitely,
And so I guess, you know, it's the first thing that would give you a sense of this is valuable to me.
right,
This story is valuable to me.
sure, yeah,
So therefore, to have that, you know, I am Portuguese,
yeah,
even though they've been here for
right,
the longest time.
yeah,
But actually, it's I don't have a right to say that they're not Portuguese.
right,
Seriously.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
of course, yeah,
Yeah, I have
yeah.
no right to say they're not.
no,
But I think it's problematic when you discount the idea that another government or administration or colonial power decided to call you something else.
sure, yeah,
And it was for actually racialized reasons.
right, yeah.
I mean, that's my. I don't know
Yeah.
whether you get me.
I do totally understand. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, but it's from a colonialism, Craig, like with English, Portuguese, French coming into that
Yeah.
part of the world. But is there much talk around the negative impact? Like you're talking about.
Well, now there is. Now there is.
Yeah.
As the country becomes as the world becomes more woke
Yeah.
to what colonialism really was about.
What it was really.
Yeah,
about,
yeah.
Which basically
Yeah,
is
yeah.
enslaving
Yeah,
people for
and
economic
enslaving
gain.
people,
Right?
exploitation.
Yeah.
All of that.
Yeah.
You know, but then of course there's all the other good stuff, like the fusions of food.
Right. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah, so it does rock people's idea of who their grandfathers were, I guess.
Yeah, right. Exactly. The understanding of their ancestry and what really occurred.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's only a conversation in Australia that we've had probably the last 20 years or certainly in this generation.
Well, it's new.
about-
It's new. This whole
It is new, isn't it? Yeah. but-
decolonizing the mind.
yeah, but I'm interested to know how it plays out in especially somewhere like Malaysia, and I think somewhere like Singapore might be a bit different because they're just sort of more focused on seems like from what I gather, like the now, rather than moving forward. But
Yes and no. They just this year, from the beginning of this year, they've been celebrating. Okay, Singapore's bicentennial, which is 200 years. Okay, but the 200 years stems from the idea of Raffles having Sir Stamford Raffles having discovered Singapore,
okay, right,
and so there has been a backlash to. Actually, what is this bicentennial all about?
yeah,
Isn't it about a white man saying he's discovered Singapore when
Sure.
it's been there for centuries?
yeah, right, exactly,
So, but it has been quite interesting how the curators of the bicentennial celebrations have tried to deal with this situation. And I really must say I was impressed.
okay, because it would be a difficult thing to
Yeah,
work
yeah.
with, yeah. What sort of things have they done?
Okay, one of the best things, not best, but incredible things that they did was they've got the statue of Stamford Raffles in a prominent place in the Singapore city.
Okay,
Okay, and he's like standing there, like
sure, looking
hand
more,
on his hand on his hip,
prestigious
kind of
looking, yeah.
right. So then what they did was that they came up with 5 other characters
Okay.
from Singapore's pre-Raffles history
Oh, okay. Yeah.
and placed them around him.
Sure.
You know,
Okay.
to say that we might be celebrating the bicentennial, but we're just using that as a point of reference.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
right.
then let's have conversations around that date.
Yeah.
and
It's a good way to
so
put it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, there's a website you can go to, and it's really quite interesting where they've confronted certain issues that people felt strongly about, like
Okay.
who really was Raffles, and did he do such a good thing for Singapore?
Right.
you know?
Yeah. Sure.
And why are we celebrating, this kind of thing, and what does it mean, and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So there's been some very honest conversations.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Okay. And what's your take then with Australia? You must have you seen this each year? I think for the last probably
Australia Day.
yeah for the last 3 or
controversy.
4 years at least. I know, like for example, Triple J Hottest 100 always used to be on Australia Day. They've changed it. What's your thoughts on the way we look at Australia Day now, and perhaps what we could potentially do in the future?
It's kind of like ways of seeing, isn't it? How do you view these dates when a particular people landed here and made it like as though they now owned it? Like Singapore, I guess once they experienced, they realized that there was a voice saying, there were enough people saying, hang on, let's stop and look at this. That's what's happening here in Australia.
Yeah.
And that's good.
Yeah.
And
We're starting to question at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the conversations need to happen.
That's right.
If not, people remain fixed
Yeah.
in their ideas of certain things.
Yeah. Which was what Australia was like for
Yeah.
decades and decades.
Yeah,
and
because
decades,
there was no conversation.
There was no conversation.
So
No
now-
questioning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so conversations are really important for us to figure out what really is truth,
Yeah.
and what really matters eventually.
Right.
you
Sure.
know? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes the truth doesn't matter
Right.
as
Yeah.
much as we think it does.
Yeah.
And that's where certain things cause a lot of problems.
Yeah.
What the truth is, and if it really matters. I think that's the importance of stuff like we're doing now, talking about issues that we feel strongly about.
Yeah.
And I must say that every week I tune into Q&A,
Okay.
ABC's Q&A, because I love the way it's handled.
Yeah. It's good.
Two different points of view.
Yeah.
It's very inclusive
Yeah.
in having different points of view.
Sure.
You know.
Although there was an episode, I don't watch Q&A all the time, but there was an episode recently, that got taken off the live streaming.
Yes. When some feminists, it was a panel of women.
Yeah.
And it was, but I mean, I think it was important that it happened, because it shows the anger
that the episode happened,
Yes.
or that it got. Or
No,
taken
I
off?
don't think it should have been taken off. I think it should have been. Well, this is me saying in hindsight and stuff. But when the conflagration is happening,
Yeah. Sure.
it's difficult.
Yeah. Because for those who don't know, this episode, I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks ago, perhaps. It got
Correct,
taken off because there was some of the panelists talking about violence and implementing violence against people.
Yeah.
As like a
Men
form
versus
of,
women.
Yeah, that whole thing.
Yeah.
With
inciting violence against men.
That's right. Which at the moment it seems to be, it's playing out that it seems to be more of a left-wing progressive doctrine at the moment. Like I know it's certainly like when I was at UWA, the socialist Marxist type fraternity, they were all about violence. They were all about, socialism generally has to be enforced through violence, or like their idea of like a change in dynamics. It comes through violence, and that's the way it's played out. That's how it's been played out for decades and decades around the world, to the detriment of millions of people dying.
Yes.
But it seems to be this form of like left-wing understanding and progressive understanding is that there needs to be some sort of violence perpetrated in order to create change, which it really was shown, I feel like, in this episode, that the way to sort of deal with things and change things is through implementing violence.
Well, the idea of implementing violence was presented, and I think the response to say that it is wrong should have been more thought through.
Yeah. I certainly don't agree with them banning it or taking it off.
Yeah, I don't agree with them banning it or taking them off. I think it should have been left there to encourage more conversations because
Bring light to those issues.
bring light to those issues and figure out once again what is the truth and whether that matters.
Right.
So like perhaps because now we've kind of like shoved it under the carpet, kind of thing, and whereas perhaps more thoughts and feelings about how we think it'll play out, what we think it might lead to, how we feel we should respond to it. I mean, those are stories that haven't been allowed to play out.
No, that's right. Because today we have this news cycle though as well, correct? Where after 2 or 3 days, I've been fascinated by the Jeffrey Epstein story. I don't know if you know.
Yes.
That, like, just incredible for anyone knows. Jeffrey Epstein was sort of brought into this pedophilia saga with like wide-ranging, wide-featuring sort of angles towards it, and the people involved. The latest of which is the Prince Andrew interview and that debacle. But the whole story about him and his death, it was like it was shaping up to be the biggest story in history. Correct. This man was jailed, going to be charged for basically facilitating a pedophilia ring with some of the most major players in the world involved. And then it just got put onto the carpet. And then 3 or 4 weeks later, he commits suicide. Apparently. Gets suicided. And then that gets put onto the carpet, and we all go, like, instead of having like a discussion, I go, what is going on here? We have this news cycle now that these issues come up, mass shootings in America, for example. 3 or 4 days later, we're on to the next thing, nothing feels like it's ever getting discussed or resolved.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like I don't know whether you saw the speech by Sacha Baron Cohen.
I did,
And I mean, like, it's quite interesting.
Social media does play a big part in that too, right?
Yeah. It's very interesting how, and some commentators pointed it out. I mean, like, he was exploiting certain stereotypes and gaining from the kind of social media propulsion that took place. You know, and definitely. It was to his benefit, and he gained from it. And now he comments on whether or not there should be a platform, and if there was a platform when he did this thing, would his stuff have seen the light of day, and would he have been as successful?
Sure.
You know. So, but this also is very interesting because what he was doing was parody and satire.
Right.
Which is a bit different.
It is different.
Yeah.
You know,
which it is very different, and we need to know, and we need to be more resilient to that kind of play.
But we're losing that resilience. So
correct.
And that's a fundamental issue. That like for our whole human history, the importance of the comedian or the importance of the joker to be able to explain and put a satire to the event, to make fun of the king. You know. We're losing that. We're losing the ability to. We're just taking ourselves too seriously, and it's to the detriment of us.
Well, I'm not sure whether it's we are losing it, or certain people have figured out how to take advantage of it in order to guide how society feels.
Sure, that's a good point.
You know, because like for instance, point. I mean, on the one hand, you know, you can parody Trump. On the other hand, you can also parody Bernie Sanders.
Sure. Yeah.
You know. Yeah. So therein lies an even greater requirement for us to have honed our critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
So that we can really filter.
Yeah.
And so, what are we doing with our young to stop them enjoying and learning from art making? Is actually, you know, really reducing their critical thinking skills.
It is. That's right.
And that's why I am very upset with what's going on with the ScoMo government's latest. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we're creating children that are becoming much more rigid. Yeah.
I feel like through those sort of factors.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at things like I watched the recent Dave Chappelle, you know, the stand-up comedian Dave Chappelle. I don't know if you've seen it, but he's sort of his last stand-up special. I think it came out maybe 3 months ago, But he has an amazing commentary of social dynamics, social factors, and he was basically this whole special sort of around the difficulties he faces now, even talking about these subjects and making fun of them. I mean, he's been doing this for 20 years, and it seems like in 2019 it's become harder than ever to but he really sort of made a point to discuss it this time around and give some voice to it. It was an interesting. It was very different to his other stand-up specials. It was sort of along the same lines, talking around these different social dynamics that we have to have in play, both in regards to racial identity and political identity, but played out now under this guise that he understands that anything he says now, there's going to be a group of people that take off with it and lambast him for it. Whereas that people used to understand that before. You think that they used to understand that it was just satire. It was just his way of being able to communicate his thoughts about the world in a funny manner, and that's sort of at risk he feels at the moment.
And I mean, if he's facing a backlash, it might be a concerted effort. You know what I'm saying? To create public dismissal of what he's trying to say. Sure. I mean, I worked in marketing communications and PR and stuff and advertising. And so I kind of understand some of the communication tricks, the framing, and the must-have points, and how if you say it often enough, people start to believe you. Sure. And that whole idea that just keep plugging at it, and after a while, it'll have an effect. And I see that so often in Malaysian politics. In this hammering on the same points, boom, boom, boom. After a while, it has an effect.
There's that phrase: if you tell a lie often enough, it'll become the truth. And more and more people are getting with the program of how to work propaganda or stratcoms or stuff like that. And I don't know. I don't know. I know, right? I mean, I've wrote a post recently how I was feeling. I used to up until maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I felt very optimistic about what the internet was opening up for us and social media was opening up for us, where we were beginning to understand the world around us a lot better, and we were starting to question and all that. But I firmly believe over the last 2 to 3 years, there's been this shift where instead of it opening up the world to us, it's been used to program us in a way. And Naval Ravikant, who I follow and I have tremendous respect for, he talked about in a recent Joe Rogan podcast about how we have the best minds in the world at the moment, working on the algorithms at Twitter, Google, Facebook, to steer us in their direction of an ideology that they follow. And we're losing the ability to critically think. And I was like, that's exactly right. That is occurring. And I think it's only really been, again, over these last 3 or 4 years from my subjective experience of it, trying to be objective about it as possible as I can. But that, we've gone from this potential to really understand each other and the world around us to, at the moment, it just seems we're getting into our echo chambers of groups, we're
just reacting. Without reflection. And it's because, really, I mean, expediency is king.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
And this is where we need to tell ourselves, slow down.
Right.
Rethink that action you're about to do. That word you're going to say. Is it necessary? Or where will it bring you?
You're right.
That whole idea of mindfulness, which has become a buzzword, is why it has come up.
Sure. Through necessity, really.
Necessity.
I think that's something that Naval Ravikant speaks about, is that we just need to detach. We need to the troubles of modern times is that of abundance. It used to be scarcity, getting enough food. Now it's of abundance, and especially having too much food, too much technology. And what we really need to do is, become an aesthetic and just retreat back. If we want to be able to function in society, we need to really be able to retreat back from it. But we're sort of, and I'm guilty of it myself, can be at times just be so ingrained and attached to the goings on, the newest news article, what's going on here, what's going on there, what this person's saying.
And it's the sugar in packaged and processed food.
Yeah, I know, right? It's basically the same thing, isn't it? Yeah. Well, on that note, Vernon, I think it's it's been
we could go on.
Yeah, we could too. Well, hopefully we'll have a part 2 one day. It'd be good if we could too, for sure. But we covered some really good points and topics there.
I guess
that was wide ranging, wasn't it? Is there anything you'd like to add or anything?
No. I think covered quite a lot of issues and ideas and thoughts and
I mean, it's they're all complex though, right? And I think they could take hours and hours of like reflection to really sort of get into. But it's good that at least that's what I love about podcasts is at least gets the journey started in that, and we're moving away from sort of traditional mainstream journalism / media of like quick 2 or 3 minute interviews where
sound bites
where it's all about sound bites and getting people to say sort of extraordinary things that we can instead just sit down for a period of time and discuss it rationally and objectively. I think it's very important.
And pull it through.
That's
slowly.
right.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, for sure. Like a good stand-up comedian can do as well.
Yes.
Which I appreciate that art. So how can people find out about you, Vernon? Do you have any Twitter?
Well,
Facebook,
I'm Vernon. My name is Vernon Adrian Emuang. So I am everywhere on the internet as Vernon AE.
Okay.
Vernon Adrian Emuang AE, Australia, England.
Yep.
VernonAE.com is my domain.
Yep.
And most of my social media appears there.
Okay.
But yeah, everywhere on the internet.
Nice.
Internet, Twitter, Instagram.
Yep. All the usual places.
Yeah, all the usual places.
Cool. I'll put a link up then to the website in the comments below. So if anyone would like to follow Vernon and move for that'd be great. Yeah, and please contact him. It'd be fantastic. And if you have any questions as well about any things that we spoke about in this podcast, just let us know.
Happy to engage.
Yeah, it's a great thing to talk about, and especially with new people as well. So that's why I appreciate being able to meet you today. I know Rob has wanted us to have this podcast for years. So it's been a long time coming. Okay. So it's good that we can do it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All best.
Really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone out there. And we'll see you next time.